Hassan Whiteside was a young elite talent that couldn't make it in the NBA. It got so bad he played overseas and saw a car bomb explode in Lebanon. When he finally made it back to the NBA, the Heat made him their franchise player on a max contract. But just 4 years after leaving Miami, he's outside of the league again at 33 years old. Whiteside led the NBA in blocks 2 years ago and he can't get a job. Mason Plumlee is a starting center. No offense. So what happened to Hassan Whiteside? What could he possibly have done to get rejected by the entire league twice? Hassan had video game numbers in college that made him an instant NBA prospect. 13 points, 9 boards, and over 5 blocks in just 26 minutes a night. He set the college record for most blocks by a freshman. So Whiteside declared for the NBA draft, but teams hated what they saw up close. In a meeting with the Miami Heat, a report said he got upset and just left during the middle of a workout. ESPN said his ego was so big, it was a huge red flag. He projected a confidence that bordered on naive arrogance. He compared himself from everyone from Dwight Howard to Hakeem Olajuwon and was insulted that our scouting report didn't have more on his three-point shooting ability. Yikes. But still, an athletic 7-footer with a 7'7" wingspan is worth a flyer, so the Kings took him in the second round in 2010. Hassan only played 19 games in 2 seasons. They sent him to the G League, and then they cut him. Nobody picked him up. If that wasn't enough to humble Hassan Whiteside, what happened next would scare anyone. He signed with a team in Lebanon, which is a Mediterranean country that shares a border with Syria, who had just begun a civil war. The team's security guard carried an AK-47, and a car bomb explosion once delayed a physical he was supposed to have at a hospital. In just his second game of the season, a fight broke out in the stands. The players jumped in like the Malice at the Palace. So he got out of Lebanon and went to China the next year and had another horrible experience. Hassan said, your translator is basically everything to you. If he's lazy and he doesn't want to help you, you're gonna struggle. Well, a player from another team told him, Wo Shi Ni Baba meant, hello, nice to meet you. So Hassan said it to everybody, like at home or on the street or in the gym, but it turned out what that actually meant was, I'm your daddy. It's no wonder everyone was so cold to him. But NBA teams were keeping an eye on his development, and when the Heat had a bunch of injuries in 2014, they offered Hassan a G League contract to play in some NBA games. On January 3rd, in Houston, he dropped 14 points, 2 blocks, and 6 boards, and never looked back. The Heat kept him in the lineup, and after that, he averaged 14 points and 3 blocks in just 27 minutes. His potential was sky high, especially playing with vets like Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, who could keep his ego in check. The next year, he had huge games, like 26 points, 5 blocks, and 12 boards against Orlando. Hassan finished 4th in most improved. Articles were written about how Hassan Whiteside was changing the NBA. Dude, it was in Lebanon and China a few years before. He helped the Heat win 48 games that year and get the 3 seed, but after the season, his life was about to change again. The Heat swung and missed on every big free agent. They tried to lowball Dwayne Wade, who got so offended he left for the Bulls. So with a ton of money to spend and Hassan getting big offers from other teams, Pat Riley gave Hassan a 4-year max contract worth almost $100 million. Turns out he was people's daddy. Dude went from doubted to overseas, but was finally where he belonged. But the next season, some of those red flags came back. Hassan was being paid like a franchise player, but he just wasn't ready for it. He no longer had those playoff caliber teammates next to him, and in the 2018 playoffs, he was a complete non-factor against Joel Embiid and the Sixers. But there was an even bigger issue for Hassan right over on his own bench. His backup was a young center named Bam Adebayo, who was showing a ton of potential, especially against modern NBA centers. Hassan was only comfortable in the paint, and he struggled against guys like Karl Anthony Towns or Kristaps Porzingis, but Bam could defend all the way out to the three-point line, had offense himself, and Eric Spoelstra started to bench Hassan in fourth quarters. One day in April 2018 against the Nets, Hassan got so upset he told the media, "We've got one of the best centers in the league," Talking about himself, of course. Why are we matching up? It's really bull, man. I don't know if I'm questioning my future on the Heat. Maybe. Not only did the Heat fine him for that, but Hassan officially lost his starting job March 2nd, 2019. Bam Adebayo led the Heat to their biggest win of the season against the Nets. It was obvious by the end of that year he needed to move on from the Heat, so they dealt him to Portland in a 4-team sign and trade for Jimmy Butler. Hassan led the NBA in blocks that first year in Portland, but they only made the 8th seed and lost in the first round. People were starting to wonder, is Hassan Whiteside really overrated? Every time he faced a big man like Jokic, Embiid, or Giannis, Hassan would crumble. Despite getting big numbers in the box score, he was actually bad for defense. In 2020, the NBA coaches voted for Defensive Player of the Year. Guys like Rudy Gobert and Bam and Brook Lopez all got votes, but not Hassan Whiteside, despite having better stats. Hassan led the league in blocks and had as many rebounds as the actual Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. But when you looked deeper, he was one of the worst players for team defense. Hassan had a 112.2 defensive rating, which is awful. One example of this is a play last year as Gobert's backup in Utah. The ball luckily goes to Hassan, but he just lazily gives it back to the Pistons, and instead of being pissed at himself, he doesn't even care. Just lets Hamidou Diallo dunk on him like it's an all-star game. That kind of play made coaches pull their hair out, but it's the kind of thing that you might not see in Hassan's box score, but you saw all the time when you're actually watching him play. This offseason, the Jazz let Whiteside walk in free agency and nobody picked him up. He's still in peak physical shape, but his skill set isn't what teams really need. Plenty of other big men are out there, like DeMarcus Cousins or Dwight Howard, Tristan Thompson, LaMarcus Aldridge, but Hassan is probably more skilled than all of those guys. The issue is the same thing that made him fall in the draft. The ego came back after he got paid, and it shows in the locker room and on the court. It's not just that an old school center who doesn't shoot threes can't be in the NBA. I mean, look at DeAndre Jordan. He is getting real minutes for Denver, and he's 2 years older than Hassan. It's the attitude that never got fixed. Somebody could still pick him up, but Hassan Whiteside never became the player that his huge talent said he should have been. Now, the Heat had a great run after moving on from Hassan. They got Jimmy Butler, who immediately took them to the NBA Finals. But this year, things are getting awkward for Jimmy Butler on the Heat. He's 33 years old, and that window is closing. Check out this video to see what the huge problem is with Jimmy right now.